Okay, it's November 1st, 2022, 7:30 PM. I'm going to call the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Members present, myself, John Tehan, Bob Shabbat, Andy Marco, Doug Roberts, Rebecca Sanowski, and online is Joseph Hall. All right, no applications for receipt tonight. Item D, public hearing, PZ-22-16, application for construction of a new commercial building and solar array at 0 Ruby Road, 46/026-00, owner Ralph Toulis, applicant Peter Parent. And this was continued from 10/18/22. Okay, where did we leave off?
I think the only reason it was continued is that in-laws hadn't acted.
Okay, is Inland Wetlands acted on it?
Yes, they did.
Okay,
Inland Wetlands approved the application last Monday, a week ago yesterday. We did receive comments back from Joe Dillon, town engineer, which were minor. One referencing a referral made to DOT, which was done, and we were copied in on comments from DOT back to the applicant.
okay,
There was a reference to the location of the wells and the stormwater system, but acknowledgement that that would be handled by the health department. And
is it true that the sight lines, none of the DOT stuff would be acted on until it's further along? I
yeah,
saw something in there.
there would be that process would be something that the applicant would handle with District 1, but they are not going to really put energy into having a discussion about changes off-site unless they know the town has already endorsed the project.
Okay,
So you may see that between P&Z approval and the potential building permit. They can, and the third comment, they suggested that they look at how to eliminate potential erosion from the drip edges of the panels, which we talked about with them at the wetland meeting. So they're going to do some final tweaks, but other than that, Joe had no concerns. And that is online with the materials as well as well.
quick question. How many square feet is the proposed building? Oh, yeah, just
Mike might have a better answer on that. Yeah, really, all of the plans,
Not big.
other than the site.
Six or 28.
Small.
Yeah.
purpose of the solar arrays, the power of the site, is it to sell power back to the grid as well?
I suspect that's what it is. He's probably got some financial assistance from either the state or the feds on building
The
that.
car chargers on site too.
But he's also looking at the high-speed chargers because he's got access to 480.
You made mention that they already had talked to Eversource.
Yeah, they already have interconnection
about
approval.
connection.
Yeah.
The other comment I wanted to make, Robert, is in trying to market that property, one of the things I tried to get accomplished was some grading between the north property line and the exit ramp.
Yeah.
Because of its previous use, there was a borrow pit that ran from about this the south property line almost all the way back to the road that goes over the bridge. When they reconfigured that exit in the 70s, they took about half of my dad's parcel there. It was about 8 acres to begin with. So they basically cut the two ramps right through the borrow pit. So you've got a lot of really, really funky terrain in there. And I had spoke to rights of way with the DOT to try and do some grading between the property line and the exit ramp, just to improve sight lines and to improve visibility for TA, as well as, my portion. And rights of way would hear nothing. They didn't want to hear anything until the town had given their blessing on a development. That may come back, depending. I mean, I would support that, but I'm not the one developing it. So if they're willing to do that, then I certainly think that would be a wise thing to do, because you get this one big hump where the telephone pole is right at the end of the exit. Doug, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You got a lot of this kind of terrain between the property line and the ramp. And that could all be smoothed out with minimal impact and not affect drainage at all. But it's going to be up to the applicant's pocketbook and whether or not he can run the hurdle with you. Other than that, right, I think it's a reasonable use for that piece of property.
Any further comments from the public on this one? Seems relatively straightforward from what I've read on it. Last meeting. Any comments, questions from the commission? I'm going to make a motion to close public hearing PZ-22-16.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing closed. PZ-22-17. Special permit application for cannabis retail establishment at 11 Phillips Way. Owner BTV Realty of Willington LLC, applicant Patrick Johnson, and this was also continued from 10/18/22.
Evening, everyone. Thank you once again for having us.
Her name is.
Sorry, my name is Patrick Johnson. I represent Nutmeg Willington JV LLC, which is the entity that's officially applying for this special permit. We met with you on the 18th which was our first hearing on the special permit. I believe we answered most of the questions that were asked. Mr. Marshall from public and another gentleman raised some concerns about the interpretation of the language on how the measurement should be made. It is our understanding that town has engaged with town council, and I believe there is a opinion put forth from town council that would actually support, I believe, the PNC's team's interpretation of said language. So hoping that that can maybe be mentioned, and we could maybe proceed from there.
It's my understanding as well that the town council agreed that, it's from the edge of the establishment to not to the property lines. So I think that's clear. Am I correct in that assertion?
For retail,
For
yes.
retail, not for grow operation or whatever that
Right.
differs.
The measuring, the criteria that we use to measure is different in the way it's written in the reg between a retail establishment and a cultivation establishment. And cultivation is made clear that we're measuring lot to lot. So he felt that there was no concern with basically a misapplication of the regulations or definitions, particularly related to the guidance that we had at the time the regs were drafted, that these uses should be handled like liquor establishments absent any regulation. That was what the state had said we would have to do. So he indicated that there were no issues with proceeding. And I gave a copy of that to Walter.
Okay, so there are no issues. So with that.
So thank you. So I think last time, I think that was really the only pending issue. I think that warranted the continuation of the hearing, unless there's additional questions. I think that's all. More than happy to answer an issue question. I know you and Mr. Parcel were not here last time, so if there's any additional questions, I'd love to take them.
I have one quick question. New establishment like that going in the plaza, any plans for traffic control, parking? I would imagine there'd be a great deal of interest, probably when it first opens.
Yeah, I think we hinted upon this last time. I mean, the parking plaza itself, we believe has plenty of parking. I know there's an area where construction vehicles are parked there.
Yeah, lots
kind
of
beside-
more.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
gotten approval that we could use that if needed. We do plan to work with kind of local police. I know we've done it on other stuff to have on site, at least for the first few weeks, to help mitigate traffic if it's warranted. So that's certainly something we'll try to coordinate ahead of time. And then we can kind of reevaluate on a week by week basis. It does sort of kind of depend on how the state will open up the market. Initially, I think the governor mentioned trying to open up the market by end of the year. I think now we're hearing kind of March, April is the first time they're going to try to do it. By then, there should be many operators that are going to be ready to open. So it's probably not going to have the same kind of lines at the 5 or 6 that might be ready. Maybe by March, there might be 20 or 30 open. So I think it should lessen kind of any individual impact. So I guess to make a long story short, we're more than happy to kind of work with the town and work with local police on help staff that as needed and for as long as needed. But we do not expect kind of long lines given kind of where the state's headed as far as opening and readiness of where it's going to be multiple operators.
Any further comments or questions from the public? Yes, James.
Yeah, James Marshall, 46 Fisher Hill Road. I know I made the comments at the last meeting, but I'm gonna, go into further detail now because I think it's worth mentioning. The way this regulation is written, even if town council says there's flexibility, it is clearly not allowed.
James, you're wrong. You're wrong.
So this is
Don't
something.
rehash everything you did in the last
I'm not
meeting either, because we were supposed to present new evidence.
Okay, respectfully,
Yep.
I went back to the meeting minutes.
Yep.
At no point in the meeting minutes is it clarified that this, and during the public hearing for this regulation, where you guys debated this with the public, it made any specific mention that this was the prop to the building limit, not the property line. All of the discussion with preps, for the buffer distance presented, there was no discussion of it, period. This is what you guys discussed and had a public hearing about with the public during that debate. It was not clear. I attended most of those meetings because they coincided with PC 2210. This is not, it's. Regardless of how the council,
So it doesn't matter what a council says
it's
now.
your decision, correct?
Yes,
And
you're
that's fine.
wrong, James.
Okay,
You're wrong. You're wrong. You can go on for another 20 minutes.
I'm not
You're
going
wrong.
I respectfully
Yep.
disagree. I think this is a mistake and not a good one, but it goes against what that public hearing, the intent of the public hearing, where you presented this regulation to the public and they had the opportunity to debate.
The way the reg is written, Jim, it says permit premises.
Correct.
It doesn't say premises.
Correct.
Permit premises has
relates
its
to liquor
own
regulations.
definition.
Which
in
is the
zoning regs,
establishment.
Which is the establishment.
For a liquor, governed by the liquor. department.
That's the nearest conforming use that we have to a permitted establishment like we have here.
You have a definition of premises.
We have a
Applies
definition
to
of permit premises as well.
law. Again, it was disingenuous to the public if this is the interpretation you're going to go.
All right, you
So,
done?
I'm done.
Okay. Kathy Demers,
Hi, Kathy Demers, 48 Nason Road. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
yes.
Yes. 2 items. One, I just want to go back to the cannabis regs, section 11.25, 3.1 A1. When we're talking about measuring the distance from a child daycare, it does say using a direct line between any part of the premises and any part of the lot used as such, and shall not be located adjacent to any park, playground, and public or private school. So there is something in our regs that does describe that any part of a lot used as such. So I just want to bring that to your attention so that can be clarified. And I do have another question. In the applicant's application, I see that they're seeking to utilize the existing drive-through window. And I was wondering how traffic would flow through there, what their plan would be if there happens to be a large amount of traffic that will be pulling in through there when people have already called for pre-orders. Those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Hi, Kathy. This is Patrick Johnson. the drive-through is obviously designed to handle some traffic, right? The flow is kind of natural, kind of coming around and then along the building. While we don't expect there to be long lines for drive-through, we will have staff ready, willing, and able to kind of help control that as needed, and asking people to park in the parking lot until space opens up in the line. So that is something we plan on doing. And like I said, I don't expect more than 3 or 4 cars at a time, which shouldn't be a problem. If that, this is kind of, drive-throughs in the state of Connecticut is something new. But, based on the volume we expect and a fraction of that being potential drive-through, we don't expect lines. And a lot of people will prefer to go into the building to kind of experience and see what other products are there, is what we found in the past. So, like I said, don't expect lines. If there are lines, we'll have a designated staff member out there to helping control that, asking people to hold back, wait in the parking lot, and then kind of get in line. But hopefully that's not needed. I don't think that's going to be needed. Hopefully to answer your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, further, yes, Ralph.
Ralph Tillis, 47 Village Hill Road. With respect to the drive-through, customarily, every drive-through that I'm familiar with, the orientation of traffic flow is such that it's the driver's side pulling up to the window. Are you doing the exact opposite of that?
I guess we weren't expecting to kind of reconfigure it based on how the bank did, right? So I think that would be, I guess it's a good question. If I guess maybe we have to look at it more closely. If we have to kind of flip the design, we'd have to kind of direct traffic that way. But we weren't going to kind of the bank did a certain way, and I figured we would try to do it the same way.
Well, that's the way the bank went.
Yeah.
The drive-through was driver's side.
Yeah.
Was closest to the window. If you reverse that, looking at it from the front of the building, and then people coming from back to front, that would be kind of stupid.
No, sorry, I misunderstood that. We would maintain the same flow as the bank, right? So we would pass the driver's side.
I'm not exactly enthused about a drive-through pot shop, but
And be perfectly honest, it is something where the state regulations are, to be honest, mum on that, whether or not drive-throughs are allowed. So we don't even know if we're going to be allowed to have drive-through. I don't think there is one in Massachusetts, in Connecticut. 2 of our sites actually do have drive-throughs because we do like working with banks because of the security piece of it. So depending on the state regulations, we might or might not even be able to use the drive-through. It's kind of a gray area, right?
Yes, James.
In Marshall 46 Fisher Hill, so the drive-through access and parking for the site on both aspects. That would be part of your permit application for building permit, right? You need to satisfy that this property has adequate parking, adequate site access, and adequate.
Yes, sir. I think it's stating here, we're coming back for building permit, we're coming back for.
Correct, and that's part of the permit that you're gonna be, the premises that you can.
I agree. This is just for a special permit, yes.
And I'm gonna start harping on this now, but I just want to say that these are important. This is a community that is looking to site a new school in town. These regulations are important. It might get closer to home than you think in this particular area. If you start to erode these distances and setbacks, you put subject development in question. Again, it's just not something you guys discussed clearly during the public hearing for the cannabis regulation. And I'm going to leave it at that. Its interpretations are going to be different.
Further questions?
I got a comment.
Yep, go ahead.
David Granick, 22 Willington Hill Road. I've been in this town close to 60 years. Anytime anything happens in this town, they want to have a new business or development. This town has turned it down because all the newcomers in this town don't want it. It's time to get back into the modern world, people. We're not a little farm town anymore. When my grandfather settled in this town, it was a farm town. But not anymore. It's developing, and your big cities are overdeveloped and everybody's moving east because this is where the land is and they can afford a housing project, housing or anything else.
Thank you. Further comments?
I just have a question where
Go ahead.
the parking and so you're not, don't plan to use any parking on horrible directions, the upper side of the lot of the premises where there used to be a doctor's office and stuff on the upper cap, there's an upper driveway that goes around the back and up to a second set of parking spots. Are you planning on using any of those spots?
I don't believe that, I don't think those parking spots are required for the calculations, and I don't expect us to use those parking spots.
That puts where everything lines up.
Wouldn't the parking lot density speak for the whole plaza? I mean, I don't have to, if I want to go to Willington Pizza too, I can park up in the back and walk down. It isn't dedicated to each establishment. Right? That's what I remember. We talked about this in the past.
It's all one parcel.
It's all one parcel. So you
So
park anywhere you want and go to any of the shops there. Right?
Yeah, we
Right.
wouldn't, we don't have, like, if you look at the site plan that was submitted, that was prepared when Lots and More went in, they don't have, as part of their operation of the site, allocated spaces based
Right,
upon
right.
user.
Yeah, I didn't think they were
Well,
allocated
you've got a large parking lot.
by business.
Plaza.
That's,
Yeah, in total, 158 spaces, including it.
All right, any questions online or comments? Nope. Any further questions from the commission?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
So it's interesting, the conversations that go around here. Phelps Plaza, the package store was there for years and years. And about 15 or so years ago, someone bought the parcel up on Route 32. And they opened the childcare. So childcare had to be so many feet away from the package store. Here's your precedent. And since the marijuana dispensary is going to be at least 8 inches of concrete block further away, it should be good.
All right, any further questions or comments from the commission? Okay. I'm gonna make a motion to close the public hearing PZ-22-17.
So
Second.
moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. PZ-22-13, text amendment application pertaining to modification of the strategic development zone, section 12.15, applicant James Marshall, continued from 10/18/22.
Thank you for. So I'm going to try to keep this pretty short and sweet. So James Marshall, 46 Fishville Road, applicant for 2013. So, you know, this application started out, I don't have any notes on this, I'll briefly. This application started out, it was submitted back at the start of PZ 2210. It was intended as a stopgap measure, to try to correct some of the deficiencies, allow something like that to be, or my perceived deficiencies, allow something like that to be pursued. The conversation that with both the commission and the public has been great. We got across some really good ideas at the last meeting, or at least I feel we see a perfect way of doing this. Mike had made the suggestion that we could be more restrictive with the striking of the language, and could conceivably say strike the entirety of the balance of the regulation and just hold it as a placeholder as reserved. What that does, it allows for the opportunity to run workshops, which is another great idea suggested by Mr. Toulis. You know, which was the intent. My conversation with you guys, it's been hoping to be collaborative. Feedback, I've been saying that all along. I'm trying to get engagement because I don't believe that any regulation should be written by one person. It's part of the problem, that it was too vacuum. It was created in too much of a vacuum. It's part of the problem with the creation. But I feel with the creation of the regulation in the first place. So I did present this to Mike. He sent some preliminary follow-up, or brief response saying there might be some additional language that needs to be interpreted or that needs to be added to this to capture the intent of the application seeking to revise the regulation. But I present this as my preferred revision based on all of the feedback we've gotten, with the understanding that you guys.
There's nothing on it.
There's nothing. This would be the extent of the strategic development zone regulation. What it does is it just keeps the title, keeps the heading, reserves it for future use. And it allows for the commission, as was discussed, at the last meeting, the opportunity to workshop this and actually try to dial in the regulation and the limits of the regulation that they actually want to see, and that might be appropriate. This was discussed, the moratorium was voted through to, the separate application was moved to CROG to do a moratorium. We discussed that it might take some time. It was up to 9 months. That won't kick in for a couple of months. This gives some protection in the short term. It also it simplifies the process. It makes for a clean effort to actually dig in, meet with Economic Development Commission, meet with Conservation Commission, and definitively the public. They should have some additional input on what the vision of the crafting of this thing should be, so that it actually works for Willington. So I present that as the latest round of revisions, but because I don't know where Mike has gone or what the requirements are for his modifications to this, the old application, I'm going to submit this because I think once you close the public hearing, once I sit down, I'm not going to be able to give you guys anything else, but I'm going to do this as well. So if this is not the way you want to go, the initial clean regulation still stands. These are just 2 supplemental revisions to that. So to make this conceivably an adaptable text revision in and of itself. So it takes the entirety of the initial changes and it changes 2 things that I talked about at the last meeting. What it does, again, as a short term until the moratorium were to be put in place, this may not be the perfect regulation, but I believe it is more protective and serves the town better in the short term than what we currently have. What this does is it strikes non-DC or DI zoned lots from being allowed in the SDZ in the short term. So it focuses it at least to the commercial and industrial areas of town instead of being a town-wide regulation. The second one is related to parcel. The second and third edits are related to the permitted uses. It doesn't change anything in the permitted uses. The exception of it sets, again, as a short term, a blanket cap of 250,000 square feet for any proposed use and 1 primary use in a single parcel. And then it just strikes my placeholders where I try to define individual limits for each use. Again, I think this is I shouldn't be writing this in a vacuum, and you shouldn't be forced to approve it in a vacuum, but this at least gives a temporary measure and a temporary limitation that is reasonable for the size and scale of the infrastructure in town. So it sets it at 250. That number, honestly, was just based on, it's a little more generous than the primary structure of FedEx. So it seeks to just simplify that language. So I've given you, again, the conversation has been great, I think, on all fronts. I appreciate the feedback and, the acknowledgement that, we can focus this effort a little better. So thank you for your time. And again, you have, I don't know if you can consider 2 options, but I've given you 2 options. And, to your preference, or you can reject that outright, I hope you don't, but this gives some flexibility, I hope, in the deliberation and adoption, putting in some initial short-term protections for the town. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.
I got a question, Mike.
Mhm.
Maybe you can answer it. right now, no SDC zone, somebody wants to come and apply for another 1.5 million square foot warehouse, they can do it because we don't have a warehouse defined or any size limits. They can do it.
The definition aside, they could come in under the standard DI or DC zone based upon the use, because the building size, the use of the building and the building size it's not always going to be one thing. So yeah, the SDZ is not the only way an application like we had could come before the commission.
So I think one thing we need to consider then would be define what a warehouse is. I think that's important for all this, zoning regs in general, not just, SDZ. So what are our options here?
So the other thing that the commission did at the last meeting was they voted to move forward with consideration of the moratorium, the SDZ moratorium. So one of the things we talked about was drafting a moratorium that applied solely to the SDZ so that there could be no application submitted. So after the last meeting, with the language that they reviewed, that was submitted to CROG for comment. The problem with the moratorium is it tracks like a text amendment. So we have schedule a hearing after 30 days with CROG, open the hearing, close the hearing, effective. So it was just sort of a concern that would be taking a long, take a long period of time. So through the existing text amendment application, we can make more restrictive changes. And so that's why the last meeting sort of discussed just using this application as an opportunity to not have to go through the moratorium process by essentially backing it up to the bare minimum of the reg so that it's effectively useless while the commission goes through workshops.
That's probably an appealing way to do this. That way,
It's the fastest. To Jim's comment, when he had sent me what he proposed to you, this was still proposed as a revision. And so we don't want to have the commission take an application which was submitted by a member of the public to revise, and ultimately what is approved be totally different than what was advertised. And so in thinking through it, my response to him was that there may be certain things that we need to preserve so that there's a sort of a clear breadcrumb trail of where we started and where we're looking to go. And I don't think we need to keep the nuts and bolts of potential uses and coverage and all those things. But in looking at it, I think you could basically maintain section 1 and 2, which is purpose and vision. Doesn't set any criteria, but it keeps that there, the existing purpose, and the rest you can strike. So the eligibility and boundary section, which says who and what can apply for the SDZ, would go. The application process, which lists traditional and proactive, would go. All the specific criteria for the applications, permitted uses, all that stuff, we would basically strike. And following adoption by the commission, the regs would be revised to just maintain those two. The only sort of other thing you could consider if you weren't comfortable with just leaving those two is you could tweak the section 3, which is eligibility and boundaries, to basically make it so the SDZ could only be applied to parcels currently designated as DC or DI and in excess of 400 acres, which would make it every parcel ineligible. I think that the parcel behind FedEx is the largest, and that's 390 something. So you could do that, but restricting it and dialing it back through this application is the fastest way.
Can I just ask a quick question with that, Mike, on the logistics of that? So if we leave language about what the purpose and vision, does that leave enough grounds for somebody to still come and apply under the SDZ but have no restrictions? Rather than just leaving it reserved with like no ability to apply because there's no restriction. I guess that's
Absent an application process, there wouldn't be a way for them to apply.
Right.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
We're taking the application process out. Without an application process, they would be.
There'd be no way to apply.
We could add language about 400 acres. We could also say, the SDZ, this section shall only apply to parcels currently designated as SDZ. Right, I mean, we could put something in there if you wanted to be sort of belt and suspenders about it, but right, there's no process, there's no eligible uses, there's no anything.
So what's the downside to say striking it down entirely and starting from scratch?
The only thing that I mentioned in my email to Jim was that because it had been submitted as a revision, we're basically going from an application to revise to to deleting the whole reg entirely, which is, yes, more restrictive, but was not sort of how the original application was advertised from a public hearing perspective. So the minimum, that's what I'm saying, even if you kept just the purpose, keeping one component of the reg sort of keeps that on the book and tracks with what you're discussing about effectively revisiting it. It doesn't prohibit you from doing anything to it in the next step. You can still gut the whole thing, but it keeps something on the books.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I don't have any, as the applicant, I don't have any objection to it. I think the purpose of vision, is something worth looking at, obviously, that's the work. I just think we need to make it.
What's the thought of the commission? Bob,
I think having a trail, I think Mike is onto something there. And at least it keeps a flow, as you mentioned, as opposed to starting again from zero. And if there's, it gives everyone that track to follow.
I agree, but I know the purpose of this public hearing is to deal with SDZ and changes to that.
Mhm.
The suggested change, if it doesn't solve the whole problem, it's trying to be solved, because, you got to look at other language in our regs, which is another days.
Right.
I mean, this application does mention the warehouse use too, and I do hope that as you workshop this, that's a part of that. It's, it unfortunately makes it a little too confusing with the text approval application. So it is, I feel comfortable from your prior responses that, on the same page, it's just the process needs to happen.
So Mike, next step, possibly, we close this public hearing, we put together some sort of motion for the next one,
Yeah.
in terms of maybe keeping the purpose statement, so forth, the SDC.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't like that, then you're just deleting everything, which is 12.15. The other thing that I think is, and I know that one of the things we've talked about, and that there were a lot of nervousness surrounding the denial of the warehouse project and whether or not we were going to be sued. I'll say again, the purpose of the strategic development zone as being a development district is that there is so much more inherent subjectivity in the commission's decision. It is not a traditional application process. But aside from all that, I think it looks better to keep the regulation on the books than deny a large application that was very contentious. And then the first thing the commission does is delete the whole thing. I just think that it sort of tracks with the intent of what you're talking about to keep it on the books rather than adopt a reg, have an application, deny it, and then just delete it altogether. Not that anybody's going to say at this point that anybody was predetermined and biased, because obviously that's not the case. But long term, I think it's a better plan. So if that's what you want to do, I can pull up, put together basically a red line or something to show you what I think the minimum is that you can keep. I can run it by Alan and Sage if you want.
I think you should.
Do you want to? Yeah. Okay. I'll prepare something, have them review it, and go from there.
Does the hearing have to stay open for you to do that much?
It's effectively a motion that you're looking at. It would be you reviewing a red line of proposed modifications to the application, so it wouldn't have to. I think we're all pretty clear what your intent is.
Ralph Tillis, 47 Village Hill. One of the things that Mike said, and I'm not so sure how this would fly. If you were to make it, like you said, 400 acre minimum. Are you not setting yourself up for someone to sue because
I
you
don't think
denied
that's what
them?
we want to do. I think that was
No,
just.
I think,
a-
I don't think. I don't
Thinking
think that
out
makes
loud,
sense.
I think it's what.
If you were to just limit this for now to a DI or DC with no application process, that effectively does what I think we would ultimately need to do.
I don't think any of us are anti-development. I think we're just, trying to balance sensible development is. And I'm not anti-strategic development zone either. I think there's some merit in some of the things that were in there.
I
Yeah.
agree with that. It's some of the things. Not everything.
All right, so Commissioner, you like the plan of having a,
We do. Yeah. Probably discuss a little more when it's on the agenda.
absolutely.
I don't think we're gonna learn anything more.
So at this
Public
point,
hearing.
I think it makes the most sense to close this public hearing at this point, and let me make sure there's nobody online. I have to constantly remind myself to look, even though I'm staring at the screen all night long. Is there anybody online that has any comments they would like to make before we close the public hearing? I'll take that as a no. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. So public hearing closed.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thanks just for your time. Okay. No new business. We have unfinished business, item F. PZ-22-11, special permit application for expansion of home occupation to add propane delivery at 163 Ruby Road, applicant owner David Littman.
So recap, at the last meeting, the commission closed the hearing. We went through some motions that are conditions that from our review of the record and the discussion and questions were sort of what I think minimally achieved what was discussed, which the commission reviewed. I have them here. One of the things that we decided to revisit was the location of the fence. There's a fence that's proposed as part of the conditions, and wanting to effectively verify that the location, as sort of suggested in the motions, was appropriate. So we went out, Chris and I went out onto the property yesterday and looked, and for a number of reasons, really can't move the fence from where it is shown behind this, the rock, the wall. From our perspective, or from my perspective, where it's Chris's now, the property does dive a little bit as you go. So if the fence were to move back, you get less visual buffering. And because of some stuff on the property, some improvements, there's a standby generator and other things, we just wouldn't be able to get it in a way that I think would provide a better solution. So as an alternative, you'll see condition.
25 extra linear feet of fence.
Right, so condition 2 changed from the last meeting, which basically, sorry, it's 9. Condition 9 was added so that within 12 months after the fence has been installed, business is operating, we can ask for an additional 25 linear feet. The applicant was comfortable with this because it's not sort of just running it now arbitrarily. We can have the 50 feet installed. They'll maintain the vegetated buffer that's there. And if we determine that it's not providing the screening that's necessary, we can have them add another 25 feet. And we talked about that potentially moving off the road a little bit so that it would kind of match the viewing angle. Other than that, nothing else has changed as far as what's proposed here.
So these are all the conditions.
Just suggested
Okay,
for you to review, consider.
this, we'll have a discussion. Everybody get a chance to go through those.
I'm good.
Yeah, okay.
One of my questions.
Doug? Okay. Becca? Do you feel like doing a lot of reading, or I can do it, whatever?
I'll do it.
Oh, go ahead.
You want to ask Joe if he has anything?
Joe, you have anything?
No.
Just a reminder on that.
Okay, motion to approve PZ 22-11, special permit application for expansion of home occupation to add propane delivery at 163 Ruby Road, applicant owner David Litwin. Conditions: 1, any parking of commercial vehicles beyond the requested 2 propane delivery trucks and 1 box truck shall be prohibited. 2, prior to any parking or storage of the subject vehicles, a solid fence and or gate not less than 6 feet in height shall be installed north of the detached garage and parallel to Ruby Road for a distance of at least 50 linear feet. 3, notwithstanding the installation of the required fence/gate, the existing vegetation/tree line north of the detached garage shall be maintained for a distance of not less than 100 linear feet. 4, 163 Ruby Road and 187 Ruby Road are to remain in the ownership of the permittee. 5, the existing parking area to the northwest of the detached garage shall not be expanded to accommodate additional business vehicles. 6, there shall be no overnight parking or storage of business vehicles or equipment within the existing driveway area. 7, the 2 permitted propane delivery trucks shall only be stored on site overnight if empty. 8, no propane storage or distribution from this property is permitted. 9, if within 12 months of the commencement of permit activities, the commission determines that the existing vegetation and required fencing does not provide an adequate visual buffer, it may require an additional 25 linear feet of fence to be installed along Ruby Road.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, which brings us to item 2, PZ 22-16, application for construction of new commercial building, solar array at 0 Ruby Road, 46/026-00, owner Ralph Toulis, applicant Peter Parent.
I like this application. I'm proud of Willington for getting a large solar array and car charging station. That's awesome. Thank you, Rob.
About another Ralph's, the property owner selling it, so I think it's thank the developer.
Well, no, he helped to bring it, so.
Okay.
What was the conversation about the drip edge? You said it did come from the town engineer and
That's
the
off the-
wetlands?
That's the edges of the.
Yeah,
solar
what-
Just
panels.
so
That's the
when
thing,
you
right?
have the panels, we scaled them off. They're a little bit larger than what you'd see on a residential house. And so the thought was when you have a whole line of them, the sheet flow from rain, they're
Sure.
all continuous drip at the bottom.
Right.
So we talked about this during the wetland application,
Right.
and they're gonna make some changes to their ENS plan so that they'll have a more hardy approach to soil and erosion control, but also the establishment of grass and the type of mix that they use. We talked about different ENS techniques other than silk fence. Some places you see them put like a limestone trench there.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, these are the big panels like you see in the big solar farms throughout Connecticut, Massachusetts.
There's one on 32.
Yeah, the one on
Right.
32. and I just never thought about
Yeah,
guttering. I never.
it's not, it's all gonna be sheet flow, it's all grass, so it's
Yeah.
not like it's gonna be channelized, but if you have it constantly dripping in the same
Oh,
place.
sure, just like at your edge of your house, if you don't have a gutter.
Yeah.
So he,
Roads it all the way.
yeah, so the applicant is gonna look at that.
There must be mitigation techniques for that.
Yeah, from a
The first time
maintenance,
it's come up.
from a maintenance perspective, adding a line of stone, it won't be stone in a year, right? Because they're not gonna add landscape fabric and come in and weed it and trim it. So to keep that moving, keep the maintenance down, trying to make sure there's not something else that they can do that will not get in the way. And so it felt pretty comfortable that they could do that. But Joe had given me that comment right from the get-go. He says, usually this is sort of a standard comment we make with all of these.
Yeah.
So we brought it up during the wetland application.
It's on a state road, so we don't have much to say about driveways and stuff. That's all through DOT, right?
I like the fact something new is going in.
Yeah.
It's sensible.
It's a perfect spot for it.
Because it was the first hearing from the last meeting, I didn't prepare a motion, but I mean, I can, if you'd rather see one for the next meeting, it's gonna push it out 2 weeks, but if you're more comfortable, I can do that. I don't have something prepared.
Why don't we prepare a motion for the next meeting? How's the commission feel? You want to make a swing at something tonight, or you want to wait till the next meeting?
Well, are there any, I didn't bring my ruler or anything, I didn't check any offsets, but I'm sure the building's in the right spot, there's no problems with.
Yeah.
This is a pretty small print. Normally we are.
Yeah, we got the-
Yeah, right here, Andy. Have it.
What we usually.
You guys can see it without your glasses. Page 2, building.
Yeah. We have a 2,500 square foot restaurant. We can look at the parking density as to. Mike, when you went over this, there got everything met, I could verify. Parking spaces, the size of the parking lot, non-permeable, what are they using, non-permeable, are they using any permeable surfacing for the parking lot or anything, or any of those cool things that we like to see sometimes?
They're not proposing anything, but that's because their coverage is at 16%, so they're not in excess of the 25. Their building height is less than required. Their setbacks are.
Do we have a plan
Yes.
view of the building? We don't like flat roofs, like peak roofs, we like things to look like all the other buildings in town. Do we have anything in that?
So that-
Usually our traditional.
Yeah, one of the things that I think stems from the fact that they don't have a tenant. They don't have like a full set of architecturals. I was looking through the regulations about that. I know obviously with Dollar General and stuff, that was a big,
At Dollar General, like donuts, I mean, that's what we want,
the,
dark skies, all
yeah.
that stuff.
So in the dark skies, those are things that we can roll into conditional stuff.
Conditions, yeah.
The challenge with particularly architecturals is most of the language in the regulations as written says architectural is consistent with rural character. And we learned from 2021 and all the legislative changes that we can't
Use the word rural
Right,
character.
you can't say that we inherently don't want this because it's not in keeping inconsistent with the rural character of Willington. Because developers can't say, okay, guy, go design this for character of Willington. There's nothing. So we don't have real structured design standards that say, exactly how everything needs to be designed from an objective standpoint. So yeah, that's one thing that you're not going to see in most language we have in the regs is completely.
So that's saying we couldn't impose the conditions that we did for Dunkin' Donuts and Dollar General?
I don't know what, I wasn't involved for any of those, so I don't know exactly what you got into, but just demanding certain design criteria simply because you think that something otherwise isn't match the character of Willington does not fly anymore.
How about rain gardens coming off the sheet, water sheeting off of the pavement? I don't know what was talked about with inland wetlands. Did they mention anything
they did discuss the type of seed mix that'll be used in the basin. It's not planted, it's still gonna be effectively grass. So it's not functioning in my non-engineering explanation as what you think of when you see a rain garden, and that it's not a planted depression designed to sort of deal with that, but it is a swale, or you'll see the pipe that, where is it? What are we looking at? North, I guess, north.
Is everything piped in or is it trenched into the,
There's a pipe that leaves the parking lot, goes underneath the solar panels, and then there's basically some riprap where it'll daylight to this depression. And it's not even that large. I think it's approximately at the lowest point, 2 feet from the established grade. I can ask Pete if there's some additional plantings that require maintenance.
so my only comment would be something about a engineered wetland, so that as the water comes off of the asphalt, it's moving slow enough through a planted swale, so that the water and the pollutants that it contains can interact with organic matter to start catching that material. If they're not going to use any kind of porous asphalt or porous concrete in their construction, I think that would be advisable. And probably a planted detention basin would be good also. As it grows, it produces a thicker mat of vegetation, which better mitigates the organics coming off of the hardscape.
I'll see what we did a little bit of this actually with gloves with some of the stuff that came in. We really tried to move them in the direction of cleaning the water rather than just holding the water. So based upon their design and what they can do, obviously after the fact, I'll see if there's something that he can include for that basin there that doesn't disrupt, because obviously it's surrounded by panels, so they're limited in what they can do from a maintenance perspective.
Yeah.
But I'll see if we can sharpen his pencil on that.
And they have to have some kind of a passageway
Yeah, and they do.
for maintenance. So I don't think that's asking too much more.
I agree. I'll talk with him about that and see and see what we can pull together.
All right, so what do we want to do with this? We want to have a motion for the next meeting.
Yeah, for me to be able to see
Yeah.
what they can
Okay.
tweak,
All right.
I'll try to get
We'll
some.
put it on the next agenda.
Leave this open for now.
Well, it's not a public hearing,
Oh, that's right.
so it'll be on our next agenda, so under finished business.
We closed the hearing at the last meeting, so you've got plenty of time.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll see that on the next one. All right, which brings us to PZ-22-17, special permit application for cannabis retail establishment, 11 Phelps Way, owner BTV Realty of Willington LLC, applicant Patrick Johnson.
I have, actually, we started quite a while ago. I do have, like, again, a list of working conditions based upon some of the questions and things that we talked about, which I can go through. And a lot, as you'll see, a lot of them relate to how the state requirements play into what we're doing here, particularly related to some of the questions about traffic and other stuff. So again, these are just for you to consider. Suggesting anybody take any action, but I can go through. You want me to go through each one and kind of explain it, or let's read them?
I'm going to read it first. minor typos in here, but
Yeah.
The one that I wrote.
I understand what you're getting at here.
State O, Connecticut.
Yeah, quite a bit of this is around, like, anticipating that it might be exceptionally busy.
So, yeah, one of the authorities given to towns from the law
And
is
you want
that
to
towns.
capture the money in case you have to hire police for traffic control or anything.
So in our situation, it's different because we don't have like a local trooper. We don't have anybody that's on our payroll.
Yeah.
So if they work with the state police may not bill them, but the state police can also bill them directly. So it's not a situation where the town may see costs, which is why it's written the way that it was. But I just wanted to make it clear that any costs related to traffic. And if you look at their numbers and what they're projecting for the counters, et cetera, the number of trips per day based upon the number of hours of operation is somewhere in the realm of a fifth of what the parking lot can handle. I think they were looking at 20 to 25 trips per hour is their sort of peak. With 158 spaces on the property, I don't think we're going to be in a situation where you're going to have enough parking, but if circulation becomes a problem and getting out onto Phelps, the condition that there are no costs incurred by the town, that's why that was added. And then one of the things that I talked to them about early on was condition 2, which basically requires that they keep that little lot behind the bike shop, what was the bike shop, open. So that'll pick up an additional, I think it was 15 spaces, which needs to be open for at least 30 days. And then as staff, we can tell them.
Doesn't that have equipment in there now for lots and more?
So they talked with the owner and he said he would make that available if need be. Because people will park where it's most convenient and that's an area that is convenient for them. So I don't expect it to be a problem, but I just want to have that in there. The other stuff, the litter management was added in response to some of the comments during the hearing. Expansion of the permit premises is basically because of the type of use, any change, they want to expand what's going on or go to another unit, it's got to come back to the commission. And that even though they provided us with a floor plan, they have got to go through the building permit process and the state inspection process. So if anything changes as far as a layout, they'll provide that final layout to the town so that we know exactly what the interior of the building looks like. We can give it to the fire marshal, although he had no comments or concerns when we talked with him. So those are sort of the minimum of what I think you should consider based upon what we heard during the hearing.
It's.
Yeah, the whole thing about parking and litter. They're not the owner of the property.
Correct.
The people that own lots and more own the building and all the grounds, so they have 158 parking spaces, but this 15, they've also put their plants out there when they're doing all their, so I mean, some of these conditions are not within the purview of the applicant. Like they can't, like if lots of more says, sorry, I'm gonna park the equipment there because it's my land. They would then be in violation of our condition. And then we're just gonna shrug our shoulders and say, oh, how much we can do about it. That I'm wondering about what that and about the litter. I mean, are they gonna be picking up Willington pizza boxes? And then they're gonna say, that's not my litter. But yeah, we just said they gotta keep the parking lot. So, you know, it's sort of a to put things in there that we can't, that they don't have control over. So it feels kind of weird to me.
Yeah,
Just,
that was,
and I understand the intent of it. There's nothing wrong with it. I get it, that we want to make sure that they have adequate parking, we want it to be close and all that stuff, but again, they don't have any control over that. And then they're in violation of our own condition.
so when you
Gotta
mentioned
set them up
parking,
for it.
because I want to make sure I'm following you. So when you mentioned parking, you're talking about condition 2 with the building, the 15
Well, it
spaces.
says if it's associated with building B,
Yeah,
shall be made available for public parking for 30 days.
yeah.
I guess that's fine. After 30 days, they could do whatever they want. So,
After 30 days, it can go back to the equipment rental.
yeah, right. I suppose that's.
And,
that's okay.
and that I put in there only after they confirmed with the owner
Yeah,
that
that's
that
okay.
was on the table.
So that, I guess that's.
One thing here though, Andy, on number 7, it says the permit premises and parking lot. So probably right there at the
Yeah, I know, it's just,
facility rather than,
yeah.
it's not the entire parking lot. It's,
no, I know, it's just,
it It just, if they're drawing large crowds and particularly, initially,
Yeah,
I don't think it's terribly
no,
unreasonable
it's
to
just,
make sure it's picked up.
If you want, I can
Yeah.
tweak it to say something about
no.
adequate provisions for litter disposal.
I
shall be-
think it's fine the way it is. I just. like
I hear what
to
you're
talk about
saying
it.
and you're.
I like to
you're
talk, when I say it out loud and we talk about it, it becomes more clear to me, so.
I think the owner is participatory in the fact that they sign the application and there's responsibility that they have. You certainly are within your legal right to do any of this. I understand from a.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure the building owner wants tenants, so they're gonna try to work with them, I'm sure. Makes sense.
All right, what's the thoughts? Want to wait until the next meeting, move on this tonight?
What are we gonna learn next?
Nothing. Make the motion if you want. Go ahead.
Motion to approve PZ 22-17, special permit for cannabis retail establishment at 11 Phelps Way. Owner, BTV Realty of Willington LLC, applicant Patrick Johnson. Findings. The application as submitted and subsequently amended by this approval complies with the criteria established in section 11.25 of the Willington zoning regulations for cannabis retail establishments. Conditions. 1, any expansion of the permit premises beyond the portion of the building described within the submitted proposed floor plans shall require a modification of this special permit by the commission. 2, the 15 parking spaces associated with building B as depicted on the site plan shall be made available for public parking for 30 days from the public opening date. Should on-site parking demands necessitate, additional lengths of time may be required by town staff. 3, for up to 30 days after the opening of the retail location, the town may charge the applicant/retailer for any necessary and reasonable costs incurred by the town of Willington in accordance with section 21A-422G of the Connecticut General Statutes. 4, the applicant/operator shall continuously maintain all necessary approvals required by the state of Connecticut for the duration, I'm sorry. It says, for the duration, it should say this is during, for the duration of the operation. This 5, this conditional approval shall not be considered fully executed until a copy of the state issued license has been provided to the land use office. Such approval must be filed within 6 months of the issuance of this approval, unless an extension has been provided in accordance with section 11.25. 6, no operations, sale, or advertisements shall commence without a valid current license from the state and fully executed special permit. 7, once open, the applicant shall adhere to a litter management plan to ensure the permit premises and parking lot are kept free from litter. 8, following any planned renovations prior to the opening to the public, the applicant/operator shall provide a completed interior floor plan to the land use department.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Joe Hall, you speak up, okay.
Aye.
All right. All right. Next on the agenda, item 4, PZ 22-13, that's the text amendment application. I think we know what we're going to do there. There's going to be a motion on the next, at our next meeting, how to deal with that. Which brings us to item 5, PZ 22-14. This is a text amendment application pertaining to the prohibition of cannabis establishments, section 13. Applicant Willington Planning and Zoning Commission. So this would be basically to prevent any further cannabis establishments from coming into town. And I personally, I don't think I've made it a secret that I'm not a big fan of these. We have regulations we just dealt with.
Yeah.
An establishment, that per the regulations that are existing. That applicant was treated fairly. Basically, how would we move on this one, Mike? Just motion, vote it up or down? Correct?
Yeah, the original language from way back would basically replace the criteria of 11.25 with and make this a prohibited use. One thing that I'm thinking now, we probably won't make it more complicated, but there may be some nuances that benefit us by tweaking it or doing something so that these criteria are still on the books for the establishment. Because if once we remove it entirely, it becomes non-conforming,
Okay.
which gives them, I mean, they could then not expand. They couldn't increase in size, which is fine.
Yeah.
I don't think they couldn't in the plaza, I think, based on where they are. But there may be a way to tweak the language so that the criteria can stay on the books for them, but no new applications can be received. That may give us more control.
So what would you craft language around that?
So some towns you'll see have something where they're trying to change a certain area from residential to commercial, and they'll say any such and such establishment, any house existing as prior to the adoption of this date shall be considered the following and shall be subject to X, Y, and Z regulations. Any new establishment shall be prohibited, something along those lines. But we would maintain the criteria that this application was held to so that they didn't become wholly non-conforming.
Well, it seems like when nobody seemed to know too much about the cannabis stuff until it came up in concert with the warehouse. People were saying, I didn't know anything about this. Again, public hearings were held. And then I didn't see a whole lot of noise against it during the process that these regulations were made.
It was a mixed bag.
Yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag, but
It was a mixed bag.
I mean, I'm not, I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I don't think we need it. I don't think we needed another truck stop. I don't think we need 3 new houses across my house on Eldridge Road. But they're there, but I don't think we need them. But that's not the point. The point is that it's a legal operation. It is in a plaza that their retail business is. And it seems to fit the regulations that were drafted. And since then, I have heard, I mean, the people that are against it have been fairly vocal, but there's quite a few people that think it's a fine idea. And I think that from what I've been hearing from the public is that more people are in favor of it than against it.
Or indifferent.
Or indifferent. And as you know, this is a representative democracy, here we are. So I have to say that the few people, yeah, they have very strong opinions about it. But the majority are, like you said, they're either for it or indifferent.
No, I'll be completely transparent about my feelings on it. You know, I don't care if people smoke pot. It's not my business. It's legal in the state of Connecticut. Still federally illegal, but you know, it's legal in the state of Connecticut as some of our other New England states and others around the country. I don't have any great heartburn about the one that's gonna open up in the plaza, but I don't think Willington wants to be known for pot shops and grow operations any more than wants to be known for having giant liquor warehouses or anything like that. I think it's a matter of like, what are you portraying that you want the character, like character is a dirty word now, but you know, what do you want the town to look like? And
I know
you know, it's, what do you want? And you know,
Well,
yep,
I think a mix of businesses is good. You
yeah.
don't want to overdo it. in one
I'm a
area.
strip club with that fishing. Well, in the town.
Well, we have an ordinance against like that. So
Okay. No, not anymore.
We have an adult establishment ordinance. We spent a lot of time on that. So.
So I think it's just a matter of perception. And you know, one, you know, small town, why do you need 10? Yeah, why do you need 5? One, you know, if somebody wants to, you know, be a customer there, great. I hope it's successful. It probably will be.
I'd like to see the new language you're talking about, Mike, with essentially grandfathering into one establishment. So
I'd like to see it as well.
So what I can do is, just like with the,
I think things are about balance.
Yeah.
Balance.
And there's a lot of different ways to do it. You could pump up the separating distances again to something that's double or triple what's there, go from 500 to 1500, effectively prohibiting them. And, you know, obviously, if everything happens right on, you know, a leap year with this and that, maybe there's something that we can't plan for, but so I could prepare effectively some changes to the whole entire prohibition that would keep the criteria for the existing facility, but prohibit new facilities. And that would be for retail and cultivation, correct? The cultivation is separate because we don't have anybody that.
What is the state statute for number of entities that can happen in a town?
There is none.
It went away. So it was originally, when we first started this, it was capped at 1 per 25,000. And so a bunch of towns went and adopted regs, and then they removed the cap. So.
And there's nothing saying that if this, you know, one that's going in Phelps Plaza, it's like a wonderful experience for everybody involved, that we couldn't change our minds later.
They'd be prohibited from being anywhere near there because the distance between.
Distance between Phelps Plaza.
Yes, but, you know, we certainly, you know, if we did put, you know, prohibitive language in there, you know, 3 years down the line, if
Right.
you know, all is well, you know, fitting in great, everything's good. Nothing saying we can't revisit it.
Yep, absolutely. So I can work something up, I'll run it by Alan and Sage, and just make sure that they understand, based upon the fact that we have an operator, well, we met, you know, they, in theory, they start to open. We want to have all that criteria clear so that they understand what standards they're held to, without opening it up and see what they suggest for the cleanest way to do that is. I'll have that for next week.
Okay, sounds good. All right, any further on this one?
I think verbiage is the way to go, not distance again.
See what they can come up with.
All right. Item G, approval of minutes, October 18th, 2022.
I'll move that we approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item H, public participation. It's for items not on the agenda. Anyone online? Go online. Anyone online? Nope. Yes,
Linda Hosen, 24 Pinecrest Road. Bishop Lake, for the past 2 meetings, has raised the issue with the Planning and Zoning Commission. What does the town do when a home occupation has grown like Topsy and is no longer really a home occupation? The commission didn't give any visible response. I'm raising this because this young man tonight mentioned how much Willington has changed in his lifetime. We're no longer as farming based as we used to be. And Mr. Marco last meeting suggested a site visit for at least one home occupation. I think the town is sort of at a really good juncture right now to think about the future and what to do with development and things that may have gotten a little grown a little bit too quickly or beyond, more like the house that Jack built, it just sort of keeps growing. This might be a good opportunity to take a look as to what the future should be for us. And if you're interested in doing a working group, I will volunteer to be on that.
thank you for your comments. All right, anything else? Yes.
In terms of raw materials, I considered the appearance of being a burger grinder fast food kind of place, whether it might be worth trying to attract more upscale businesses. At least an Oliver, offering steakhouse from the full bar. I mean, Ralph used to do that. I don't know if there's a way to invent the potential suitors to come to town for that kind of business. It might be worth something to consider. I feel all the time that they order just a burger stand. It's not the bomb. So, have a little bit of variety might help us.
Okay, thanks for the comment. Any further comments? Okay. All right, item I, correspondence, anything, Mike?
No.
Item J, staff report and discussion.
Well, I guess the one thing that I can add, at the last meeting, we talked about zoning reg updates and changes to the document. So I did submit, basically through the land use department, a request to ARPA for a codification project, which many towns do in their regulations up to a lot of towns use code 360, which is general code, which is a subset of the ICC, which does the building codes and all the other code documents. But there'd be a regulatory and legal analysis that would happen through them. As part of that, it would bring the document online, mobile friendly, make the text bigger or smaller based upon people who have accessibility issues with reading zoning regulations or documents that are white, black type thing. So I think it makes it much more accessible to everybody. I don't know if it'll be approved or not, but something that I submitted in conjunction with the town clerk. So we're sort of co-requesting that. So we go through that process, sort of start the ball rolling as we've sort of been discussing these momentum behind some of the changes to the regs.
That brings us to item K, adjournment. It's
Segment under just
go ahead.
discussion not on the agenda. Last time we had tossed around possibly starting meetings at 7. And then tonight we briefly mentioned that maybe we want to put an end cap on these. Would 7 to 10 be reasonable? That we start a little earlier, so we are trying to accommodate the public and get as much done.
It's either that or 7:30 to 10:30.
Yeah,
I work
I'm just
with either. I
wondering,
don't care.
I think it's worth thinking about them.
Yeah,
just so
I
we
think
don't-
I think a 3-hour meeting
I
is
think it's plenty.
it's pretty
Burn out
good.
after that, start to lose attention.
And plus, when we have large public hearings, obviously we want everybody's
Right.
thoughts to get across and
Yeah,
the
right,
time to
right.
do it. As we
We do a lot of public hearings.
Yeah.
So,
lately.
yeah, probably not gonna stop. But I think should we put it on the agenda to talk about?
Yeah, let's put
operating
that on
hours?
next agenda so we can talk about like what we want. for the
Yeah,
hours.
It'll be there anyways, because you're going to have to vote to adopt your 2023 meeting dates.
There we go.
Okay, sounds
So-
good.
Perfect,
You can just-
perfect time.
Just do it right there.
Now we'll make it so, because otherwise if we did it now,
Yeah,
all
that's
of our
fine.
stuff would
We
be
gotta do it
specials.
again anyway. That's perfect.
I want the gavel back.
We have it. It's downstairs.
Yeah.
You're not here, I don't even get a gavel.
Gotta get the hammer.
All right, it's 8:55 PM, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.